Morning, everyone. The Nova Scotia shooting that generated a public investigation, which isn't really a thing, and then because of public outcry forced a public inquiry. Well, there were people who were wondering if the inquiry was being affected or impacted by the prorogation of Parliament. And Andrew Lawton looked into it, so he says, quote, "I've seen a bit of buzz on Twitter about where the Nova Scotia shooting inquiry stands with Parliament prorogued. Was pretty sure prorogation would have no effect, but I inquired with Public Safety Canada to be safe." And it says the prorogation of Parliament has no impact on the establishment or conduct of a public inquiry. For more information, please refer to the Inquiries Act. So there you go for that. I think that that's interesting to note. So hopefully the public inquiry will continue and go forward. It's supposed to take a long time. And well, as far as scandals go, time and complication are things that make the public forget. And I'm sure there'll be a big bombshell report and somebody get blamed for genocide or something like that. And then, the newspapers will latch onto it and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, regardless, a public inquiry is happening and it is not affected by the prorogation. Okay, Aaron O'Toole. Aaron O'Toole courted the right in his leadership bid. And the way the leadership bid broke down, Derek Sloan and Leslyn Lewis, their number twos went to mostly Aaron O'Toole, and that's how we ended up with Peter MacKay losing, and Aaron O'Toole is the leader of the Conservative Party. Now, in his campaign, again, he was courting the right Conservatives, and now he's tacking quite to the center. And that's where the party was under Andrew Scheer, and if you want to have your Conservative Party be a centrist party, then fine. But it's interesting, the rhetoric. Now, I mean, Mr. O'Toole says he's he wants to govern for all Canadians, and well, I'll let him speak for it himself here. But this was his first press conference. He does questions. He was in speaking French and English, and the CPAC translated. The question and answers were okay. There was only once where he didn't answer, and it was strategy regarding, are you going to vote against the throne speech in September? And I don't know that you could really give a big, I mean, you could say, yeah, I'm going to vote no for I'm going to vote no confidence in the throne speech, but who knows what's going to happen between now and then, and strategy, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I don't know if I would have answered the question straight up. I would have said probably. Okay, here's Aaron O'Toole.
To change that. Because as I said in the wee hours of Monday morning, and I'm going to repeat it because it's so important, whether you're black, white, brown, or from any race or creed, whether you're LGBT or straight, whether you're an Indigenous Canadian or have joined the Canadian family 3 weeks ago or 3 generations ago, whether you're doing well or barely getting by, whether you worship on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, or not at all, you are an important part of Canada, and you have a home in the Conservative Party of Canada. It's time for many Liberal and NDP voters to socially distance themselves from parties who care more about their votes than their values.
Okay, and he goes through, if you care about this, you should vote Conservative. If you care about this, you should vote Conservative. Okay, fair enough. I don't like, he's pandering to the COVID stuff. He's speaking about it in the same way all of the other politicians are speaking about it. And again, compared to the 2018 flu season, the COVID season, there's graphs out there that are side by side that show that, well, the lockdown measures are not in the best interests. The masks aren't in the best interests. It's well, who knows what it is. So it's concerning to see the leader of the Conservative Party doubling down and using that kind of language, right? I saw Aaron O'Toole. He came to Guelph. I went out to see him. I was invited, and I appreciated the invitation. And I listened to what he was saying, and at the time, I didn't think he was going to win. And now that he's won, he's trying to... I think that he's trying to walk the same path as Andrew Scheer with regard to being a centrist. He talks about it. He's asked about it later on in the question and answer period. And I'm not going to cue it up, but he says he's spent an entire career not being famous by just getting stuff done. And I think he's stronger than I initially anticipated. I think he'll give Trudeau a run for his money. I think he'll connect with that mushy middle. That said, I think that it's okay to let him, because the Liberals have gone way into NDP territory. So Canada needs a Conservative Party that is not bent on sour grapes, right? You can work with somebody who's a centrist who's working for Canadians. It's hard to work with a centrist who's also a globalist. I think we're going to find out where Aaron O'Toole is. I know where the party is, but where's Aaron O'Toole? Is he going to bring the party back from being a globalist party? I don't know. And that's important because if he's not going to bring it back from being a globalist party, if he's got the same masters as the Lib Cons had, as Scheer had, as the dairy cartels, and all the same people who have bought out the Liberals, right? The special interests, the lobbyists, all that stuff, all of that baggage that comes with these these parties. If Mr. O'Toole is genuine about working for Canadians, then I can work with that. And I think a People's Party conservative opposition could work with that, right? I think anybody working for Canadians deserves to be listened to. Their ideas deserve to be given the time of day. And if the idea is, let's give all of this money from Canadian taxpayers to some bank in Asia, well, you're going to have to convince me that's good for Canadians, right? So we'll see what Mr. O'Toole does. Actions speak louder than words. He talks a lot about his record, and I don't have a lot of his record on hand to check it. But he seems popular. He seems genuine. We'll see what he does. I don't know. The jury's out, right? Like, I don't want to dismiss this as another centrist, and I don't want to overstate how the labels don't matter, right? Like they call themselves a conservative party. They sound like the centrist Liberal Party used to sound, and the Liberals sound like the NDP used to sound. And at some point, that's going to become problematic for a large majority of Canadians. Maybe, right? And maybe not, because currently, I think I've seen the polling, and we're back at 2019 levels as of before Mr. O'Toole took over the Conservative Party, which wasn't great for Trudeau because the Conservatives were leaderless at that point in time. Conventional wisdom says that now that they've got a leader, the Conservatives should be within a point of the scandal-ridden, corrupt Trudeau Liberals, okay? But who knows? Because they're going to try. What are they going to try? Oh, here we are. Here's what they're going to try. Here's the question. This is to Navdeep Bains. And, who $600 million doesn't buy allegiance, but like a continued tap of money probably does. Here's the reporter's question. You make up your mind about how they're framing things here. Here we go.
From the Harper era are returning to the Hill to work with Mr. O'Toole. And so I'm wondering if you see or are afraid of a Harper era return to science and innovation, and with the Conservatives, attempting to perhaps deny or muzzle scientists like we saw under the Harper government. And if I could also just get a reaction from you to Mr. O'Toole being named leader.
I'm not even going to play Navdeep Bains' response because the response is set up like this is a T-ball pitcher coming out in like Game 7 of the World Series and the bases are loaded, and Mickey Mantle, I don't do baseball, I don't know, but a really good batter's on the base, and he underhand ball like throws it really easy. Here you go, lobs it, like knock it out of the park, buddy. And Bains takes full advantage of the opportunity. Are you worried that the people who worked for Stephen Harper are now working for Aaron O'Toole and they'll muzzle scientists, like that evil Harper guy did? Please give me your opinion on evil Harper. And Laurie Goldstein says, more than half of government scientists in Canada, 53%, do not feel they can speak freely to the media about their work even after Justin Trudeau's government eased restrictions on what they can say publicly. And here's Science Mag from 2018. And I'm not going to open that, but the media positions things in an irresponsible way to purposely undercut conservatives or anybody who disagrees with them at all. Now, I don't agree with the muzzling of scientists, but I don't think that the Trudeau government, who have been in power and have used their power to decriminalize all sorts of things, have opened up borders, have done all sorts of spending that is, not above board, let's say, accepted gifts, accepted free travel, which is strictly illegal, right? Like, these people are very corrupt, right? And so it's very funny to see, these people are very corrupt and have used their power to enrich their friends, but they didn't bother to, open the floodgates on scientists being allowed to speak freely. Oh, how good do masks work at preventing respiratory viruses? Could you find me a controlled, peer-reviewed study? No? Oh, okay. All right. Muzzle those scientists, yes. And let's vilify Harper for doing that too. But we didn't fix it when we could, because, whatever. We're too busy giving $1 billion. Oh, we got caught. Oh no, COVID's bad. Oh, conservatives are bad. Here's the Ottawa Citizen. This makes me question the Ottawa Citizen. Ottawa Citizen says Delaney, well, this is a Delaney opinion piece. In O'Toole, Conservatives have found a winner. When left-wing papers are saying, "Oh, he's going to win. He's going to win." That concerns me. Why are they on the same page? There's something odd there. There's something that maybe just something odd. Okay. Here is iPolitics, and it says House Law Clerk raises alarm about pre-redacted We charity documents. This is, in the vein of corrupt politicians protecting their butts with black lines to make sure that what really happened never sees the light of day. Okay? A nonpartisan parliamentary official, says iPolitics, is pushing back against the decision by several federal departments to submit thousands of pages of documents to a House of Commons committee with redactions already made, saying it's not up to the government to black out parts of the tabled documents. One of the last acts of Parliament allowed by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau before ordering it prorogued was for 5,000 pages of documents to be distributed to members of the Commons Finance Committee containing correspondence about the Liberal government's decision to grant We Charity a controversial agreement to administer the $500 million Canada Student Service Grant, CSSG. In a letter obtained by iPolitics, Philip Dufresne, I looked that one up, the law clerk and parliamentary counsel for the House of Commons, said the Commons and its committees are the appropriate authority to determine acceptable reasons for withholding the documents. As, quote, as my office has not been given the opportunity to see the unredacted documents, we are not able to confirm whether those redactions are consistent with the order of committee. He wrote to committee clerk David Gagnon in a letter dated August 18. I didn't look that one up. The Commons Finance Committee on July 7th adopted a motion calling for any documents between the government and We Charity or from senior officials for cabinet ministers regarding the CSSG from March 2020 be provided to the committee no later than August 8th. The motion stipulated that any redactions be made specifically by the Office of the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Counsel of the House of Commons. I scroll down a little bit. In his letter, Dufresne said the clerk of the Privy Council said Deputy Minister of the Department of Finance, the Deputy and the Senior Associate Deputy Ministers of Employment and Social Department of Canada, the Deputy Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and the Secretary of Treasury Board, TBS, provided the committee with the documents for the respective departments between August 9th and August 17th. So they blew through the required date. The documents contained letters from each department stating that the redactions had been made to protect cabinet confidence in accordance with the motion, to protect personal information in accordance with the Privacy Act, and to protect third-party information and information on the vulnerability of their computer or communication systems or methods. In response, Dufresne said Commons committees have the power to order the production of records, which supersedes the powers of the statutory obligations of the departments. The House and its committees are the appropriate authority to determine whether any reasons for withholding the documents should be accepted or not, he wrote. One such measure is the committee's decision to have my office make necessary redactions to protect personal information and the public servants providing assistance in this matter. I scroll down. Barrett said unless the Liberals are misinformed, they're muddling the waters and misinforming Canadians. The fact is, they're using the law clerk as a shield, and so the law clerk has to call the government on the carpet and say, the fact of the matter is, the order of committee was not respected by the government, he told iPolitics on Tuesday. He also said the action is incredibly damaging to Canadians' trust in government, as well as non-partisan officials who are entrusted as safeguards of democratic institutions. This isn't the first time the Trudeau Liberals have pre-redacted documents bound for committee. Dufresne sent a letter dated March 20th to Alexander Jacques, the clerk of the Commons Health Committee, because the government sent documents to committee members on COVID-19 that had already been reviewed with some pages redacted. You don't want them to know about that. Back to this. Barrett said the Finance Committee will need to wait for at least another month to respond because of Trudeau's decision to prorogue Parliament, which has effectively shut down multiple committee investigations into the We Charity controversy until at least September 23rd. And then if the government falls and we go into an election, then we have to wait for the election period, which could be 3 weeks, could be longer. And then before anything can get going again, right? Speaking of elections, Governor General just prorogued Parliament, but the scuttlebutt says, global news, scuttlebutt in Ottawa is that Justin Trudeau has been considering replacing Julie Payette, who only 2 years ago was the Prime Minister's handpicked choice as Governor General. I think it's super funny that they're 2 years ago she was the handpicked choice, and then for the last year we've been waging a nonstop war on her character and credibility by she spent $240,000 on renovations. Patty Haydu spent $1 million and then had to vacate the office. There's a lot of And Chrystia Freeland got $15 million for her office. And do you know who didn't get any money for that? And he was requesting, I think, $15 million? The accountant. Oh, no, it wasn't the attorney general. Hold on, the accountant. Hold on. It was the auditor general, not the accountant. But the auditor general needed $15 million or something around there, maybe $10 million to effectively do the job. And instead, $15 million was given to Chrystia Freeland for her office. So yeah, apparently they're going to replace Payette after all of that, you know. It just seems like a distraction, and it makes the government look even more incompetent. And guess who's getting reporting now after the leadership race is over and she nearly won on the second ballot? She got the popular vote on the second ballot. It's the weighted returns that made them go to the third ballot. But Leslyn Lewis was the first ever Black female candidate to run for the Conservative Party. Why didn't they do any kind of reporting on her before she didn't win? Isn't that strange? And they were talking about Miss Harris, the VP pick of Joe Biden, or Joe Biden's team, as Joe Biden is not capable of picking between nap and a sandwich. You know, they highlighted her, and instead of highlighting the potential Canadian leader, seems like not a genuine use of Canadian taxpayer dollars for the public broadcasters, CBC specifically, to focus on American news rather than highlighting. But I realize that this is global news, right? But they all are guilty of the same thing, right? Like, it's after the fact. This is an incredible clip. Kian asks a question that basically boils down to where are the 20,000 missing infrastructure projects, minister? And she hangs up on him. And you can see her if you watch the video and hear the mouse click when she hangs up on that phone call. And he's the first one. He says, Kian says, I was first in line to ask Catherine McKenna a question today. Instead of answering, she hung up on me. Every other journalist behind me, the Alberta government, and every Albertan in a professional grade tantrum. Watch the full story here. So he's got a video. We're just going to watch this little end of the clip here. I just think it's funny. Here we go.
If any of the 20,000 government projects that Minister McKenna lost track of aimed at easing Alberta's unemployment rate.
It appears we've lost Minister McKenna.
I like the announcer. I guess we lost Minister McKenna. Yoink. Yeah, it was a question. See, the problem is Kian doesn't understand. The Liberals don't answer questions they don't like. They have a talking point and they'll say it. They'll repeat it, to quote Minister McKenna, over and over until that's your talking point, and everybody just gets it after that, right? So, man, they don't answer questions they don't like, those Liberals. Here's Pierre Poilievre, and he says, is the Bank of Canada preparing us for higher inflation? Higher inflation. We're between 2 and 3% inflation. I'm not going to go through this, but there are some money wonks who might want to, so I thought I'd include it. I often talk, I thought this was funny, somebody sent this to me. I often talk about how the NDP is broke, and I guess the NDP heard me, August 21st. They say, the NDP is not broke, we're not broke! And we will bring down the Liberals if principles are at stake, they say. The NDP says it's ready for a fall election campaign if necessary, stating it's in a better or equivalent financial position compared to the 2019 vote. Hold on a second here. Here's the Toronto Star and the headline from Friday, November 1st, 2019, right after the federal election. NDP was hurt by lack of resources in federal election. We're fine. We're not broke at all. They were broke in the last federal election, and they're broke in this one. Back to this. The party's national director, Anne McGrath, dismissed critics who've assumed the NDP won't bring down the Liberal minority government because New Democrats couldn't afford a costly election. Quote, we have fought elections on less and done well. Speaking of the last one, and they got the balance of power, but they lost seats, right? And a lot of seats. Okay, back to this. In an interview with CBC News, McGrath didn't hide her party's money troubles, but she dismissed assumptions that the NDP wouldn't be able to wage an effective election campaign. If needed, McGrath said the party would fund a sudden election campaign with a mix of its own money and borrowing. Parties with the biggest war chest don't necessarily win campaigns, she added. Money is one piece, and it's an important piece, but it's not the only piece. But right after the election, if you go through this one, they say money's important. And no, it's not everything, because you can create quite an impact without money. But it's important. And I was talking about how you need about $20 million for an effective leadership race for just the leader to mount, the website, the teams on the ground, the travel, the all of the stuff, housing the people, housing the team, all of that stuff costs money, right? So you need that kind of money. And then 20 million for down ticket. And if you've got less than that, then you're cutting necessary expenses as needed, right? And that's not even to mention payroll and all of that other stuff. So like you need 20 million, 40 million outside of the usual churn of the party, right? It's a lot of money. Conservatives manage it, liberals manage it. So, it's there. But man, liberals, the NDP they mortgaged Jack Layton's property to fund their last election. And I think that was paid back, but not until after, right? Not until after the election. So I say again, I don't think the NDP, I think the NDP, regardless of whether they can fight an election or if they want to fight an election, that the monetary question comes into play when thinking about strategy for next steps. And if you wield power now, and it's a kind of a dice throw whether you're going to continue to be in that balance of power position come another election, right? You don't really know. NDP lost a lot of seats in the last election, in the 2019 election. So there's a lot of uncertainty there, right? And I'm not looking at polls for that. I'm just saying I think generally that watching what the leadership's done, probably looking at their fundraising, COVID's impacting it. I think that all of these are factors that are impacting their decision. And I think that any layman can see, maybe not layman, but anybody who's paying attention can see that if you were in charge of the NDP, would you run an election right now? Nope, not a chance. Especially with Trudeau signaling that he's willing to go further left. Wealth tax, right? Really? Why would you risk it? And that's not advice. That's just, I think it's plain as day. Right? It's just right there. Low-hanging fruit. Okay, here's Ottawa Citizen. Last two stories. Canada's effectively moved to block China's Huawei from 5G, but can't say so. Look at that strong leadership. Unbelievably strong, not flimsy leadership at all. Canada is the only member of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network that has not formally blocked Huawei from 5G networks, but it has effectively done just that, delaying the decision so long to force telecom companies to exclude the Chinese gear maker. The strategy it's a strategy now. They didn't just do it through incompetence. It's a strategy. The strategy allows Canada to keep on the right side of both China and the United States as they tussle over Huawei technologies. And say six well-placed sources with direct knowledge of this matter. Now, Huawei, there's a big expose recently, like 2 or 3 days ago, about how Huawei was created from the ashes of Nortel, and Nortel was destroyed by the Chinese government military action, right, to destroy it and take the intellectual property and create Huawei. So, yeah, I think we should probably ban them. That would probably be a good idea. We should maybe do that. Can we do that? Yeah. And the last story for this morning, Financial Accountability Office says, and I think it's super weak as well. Back to this just really quickly. I think it's super weak as a strategy to do that. Like, we're going to just let it go on so long and have the consequences be so great that the private companies are going to do the governing for me. Like, is that even a strategy? I mean, I guess it's a strategy, but is that a strategy you want the leader of your country to take? Like, I'm going to ignore this problem until somebody else solves it for me, hopefully. Two Michaels who? Right? Weak leadership, just awful. Chrystia Freeland or Justin Trudeau, or both? Neither. Back to this. Last story. The Financial Accountability Office says in a report today that all four major international ratings agencies have reaffirmed the province's credit at either AA- or A+, the fifth and sixth highest ratings. I think they're going to keep the potential for value out of Ontario is there. There's production, there's intelligent people, there's proven history, there's infrastructure, there's all sorts of reasons to continue lending money, right? And we're generally pretty good about paying it back. But if you look at the debt across Ontario and then like provincial debt plus federal debt, and remember there's one taxpayer, like it's not like there's like a couple other taxpayers who are going to pick up that federal debt later, right? Those guys out of Saskatchewan, they'll do it. No, that's not going to happen, right? The provincial and federal debt needs to be added up, and then you need to look at how much people make, and then you do the calculations, right? And man, just the provincial debt was really concerning, and one of the really saving graces was the fact that we had very low federal debt. Really, $20 billion is nothing to sneeze at, but they're casually spending $37 billion for the extension of the curb, and nobody's debating it, right? Like it's unbelievable. And no idea, no plan for returning to balance, no plan for, funding the Auditor General's office, right? Like, no, we've got to build offices, except for that Governor General. not her. Don't you know she's being difficult? Right, get her out of there after she prorogues Parliament. So it's a very interesting situation we find ourselves in. There's a lot of moving parts right now. The government is ignoring the very low cases of COVID-19, and everybody's saying we've got to wait for a vaccine. And I've seen articles talking about people who have vaccine hesitation and all sorts of just wild and crazy stuff. It feels like we're on a roller coaster in a washing machine. How do you get on that, right? But there's no way to oppose what the government is doing. Like Rocco Galati is putting together his anti-mask lawsuit. There's people who are putting together lawsuits against the gun grab, the changing of the gun laws through the middle of the COVID pandemic with no debate and done through the order in council. There's people opposing this stuff, right? But I don't know how effective that's going to be, right? Like I've seen some pretty terrible decisions from judges recently. I've seen some pretty terrible legal decisions. And not to say that we shouldn't try, but man, how do we even begin to hold these people accountable? It's very, very difficult, right? It's very difficult when just listen to the ads being run by the teachers if you're in Ontario, right? There's ads being run by the teachers that are full bore fear. Meanwhile, like I've had my kid in daycare since the beginning of July. I've had my daughter in camps for all summer. She's not had one kind of problem. Neither has my son. There's been no issues, right? And like I don't understand. Well, going into flu season, I think that we're going to see a resurgence of flu-like symptoms because we do every year. Maybe not because everybody's got PP and washing hands and all of that other stuff. Probably see a very mild flu season this year, but who knows? And I don't know. Imagine being the first kid to get sick in your classroom, right? Like, I mean, you feel bad sneezing in a grocery store. Imagine you're around all your friends and you have to sneeze and oh man, like it's just the whole psychological side of this is just terrible. And I can't believe that nobody's talking about that, right? The teachers are more interested in finding out how to return to school safely, but they're not looking realistically at the COVID numbers and the numbers of impacted children is less than the flu. Right? And I mean, okay, if you're a 65-year-old teacher, if you're in your late 60s or your early 60s, I guess, maybe you have a decision to make. But I think that by and large, there's a lot of teachers who won't be affected by this. I think that by and large, there's a lot of kids who won't be affected by this. And, there's evidence around Quebec had school starting before the end of the last school year. And things seemed okay. And they're going back, no masks this year. So, man, there's so much information. There's so many contradictory rules. It seems like, well, I saw Lethbridge just today, mandatory masks, just today, no cases for no reason. I don't understand it. What is the motivation for this? Oh, we just realized that everybody else is infringing on privacy or on basic human rights, and we decided to get in on the racket. Like, what is going on? I don't understand. And why are there no sunset clauses for this mandatory mask? Why are there no criteria for this? Why is nobody upset that there's no criteria for this? Why does the entire school year look like it's going to be masked up? Like, man, it's very, very, very concerning. So sorry for the end rant there. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Financial Accountability Office, but that's what's going on right now. So I'm going to talk about it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. I didn't record Speaking Wastely yesterday. Greg and I got talking, and it was just really fun to catch up with him. So we chatted a bunch, and then I had to go pick up my daughter. So life happens. Sorry about that. And but I'm sure we're going to pick it up. I think it's really fun. And if you guys want to see it, I've had some people email and ask when the next episode is because they're waiting for it. So I think I'm going to actually do it. Like we'll continue with it. But anyway, just wanted to mention that. Oh, and I'm on Patreon now. I don't know. I wanted to get mugs out. I wanted to make mugs that say like weird and interesting, right? So Patreon seems to be like kind of the easiest way, but that seems expensive. So I'm still looking at mugs. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.